everyone, welcome back to my channel. So in today's video I'm going to be bringing you my eyeshadow palettes makeup collection. So my eyeshadow palettes obsession started about 8 years ago, so just want to let you guys know that my palette collection didn't start overnight. It did take 8 years for me to collect all of these eyeshadow palettes I do have. So don't think that I bought all these shadows or eyeshadow palettes like in the past year. It's been 8 years since I purchased my first high-end or any eyeshadow palette. Just want to share them with you. I have been binge watching all these videos here on YouTube of other people's eyeshadow palette collection, and I really enjoy watching them. I love to see what other people have in their collection. So I figured I love watching other people's collection. Maybe somebody will enjoy watching my collection as well. If you're not yet subscribed to my channel, don't forget to hit the red subscribe button under this video down below. And yeah, if you would like to know what eyeshadow palettes I have, then just keep on watching. So these 4 palettes are my palettes that I have from the drugstore. I don't really buy a lot of drugstore palettes, but these 4 are the ones that I do have. So this first one is the Maybelline the Nudes palette. I heard hit and misses about this palette, so it just depends. Like this gold color is really pretty. As you can, this dark shade is pretty dark as well, but you really need to build it up. But overall, I think this palette is okay. The next palette I have here is from Wet n Wild, and I picked this palette up during Black Friday, I believe. And I haven't used this palette yet. I am planning on doing a get ready with me first impressions video, and I plan on using this palette. And I do have a lot of drugstore items that I picked up that I want to try out to film a first impressions on. The next one is this Wet n Wild Comfort Zone palette. I've had this palette for quite some time now, and the shades are really pretty. I believe a lot of people mentioned this shade to be a dupe to MAC Club. It's really pretty. I really like these shades. The next palette that I have from the drugstore is this one from L'Oreal, and it's La Palette Nude 2. And it's just a lot of purple shades with some brown shades as well. This one's more of the cooler tone palette that they have. They do have number 1. And that one is neutral shades. I think this palette is good. It's not really super affordable. I think it's like $20 still from being from the drugstore, but the quality on this is really nice. So if you haven't checked it out or you've been eyeing it, I think this is a good palette to grab from the drugstore. So the next brand I'm going to be talking about is BH Cosmetics, which is also a pretty affordable brand. So this first palette right here is the BH Cosmetics Carly by Belle palette. She's a big YouTuber here on YouTube. Honestly, a lot of people have been raving about this palette, but I don't know if I got a dud on it. But the colors like apply really nicely onto the eyes. They don't seem to stay on my eyes, so I feel like I got a dud. These are supposed to be highlights, and you can also use them as eyeshadows. This shade is really pretty. Overall, it does not stay on my eyelids, so I wouldn't recommend it. I have heard people love this palette, but in my case, it does not work on my eyes. They do not stay on my eyelids, so... this next one is the BH Cosmetics Warm, or this one's the Cool Stone palette. I really like these 2 palettes. I feel like the quality of the BH Cosmetic palettes are better when they're in the smaller palettes than in the big palettes. I really like this palette. This purple shade is gorgeous. I don't know. I just really like the quality of these palettes, and they're super affordable as well. The next palette is the Warm Stone palette. The packaging is gorgeous, right? It's like marble. And this one's the Warm Stone of the 2. Here's the difference between the 2. I do have a video on these 2 on my channel if you're interested to know a little more about these 2 palettes. But overall, I really like these shades in these palettes, and they definitely last on my eyelids. If you're able to get your hands on these, you definitely should. I think these are worth it. I really like both of these. The next palette is another collab with another girl here on YouTube, ShanXO. She's one of my favorite girls to watch. And she created this palette, which is a 9-color eyeshadow palette. And then if you flip it around, it's a 9-color lipstick palette. I haven't used them. As you can see, they're all pretty new. But I have seen swatches on these, and the swatches are really pigmented. And then this side is the eyeshadow palette, and I haven't used this in a while, but I did use it, and I thought the colors were really good as well. As you can see here, that shade is really pretty. I like this palette more than the Carly Bible palette. This palette is way more pigmented, and it lasts on my eyes more than the Carly Bible palette does. And the last palette here is the Galaxy Chic palette. And do any of you guys save these? I keep all of mine If I can, I keep them in there for some reason. I don't know why. But this is the Galaxy Chic Baked Eyeshadow Palette from BH Cosmetics. They did change the packaging. This is the like OG packaging. And the colors on this are really, really pretty. Super, super shimmery and really... They're not like buttery, but they are really, really pigmented. And I actually really, really like these shades. If you like sort of metallic-y shades, these are really, really pretty and super affordable as well. So the next palettes I have here are Morphe palettes. And I have used some of these in my makeup tutorials, but I mostly use these for freelance because I do freelance makeup at times. So this first one is the Morphe 35K palette. And as you can see here, it's just a whole bunch of brown and gray shades. I feel like Morphe has really good quality shadows and they're super affordable. This next one here is the 35P palette, which is a lot of purple shades and mauve shades. Again, super affordable and very, very pigmented. This next palette is the Morphe 35OS. All of these are shimmer shades. And again, super, super buttery, super pigmented. You can't go wrong with Morphe. They're like super affordable. Pigmented, as you can see, like the shadows are gorgeous. And again, I have all my plastics inside. The next thing I have here is the original Morphe 35O. It has a mix of shimmers and mattes. This is like the perfect warm tone palette. Then I have this little palette. This is the 12S palette. And again, my little flap. But this is all shimmer shades. Again, this is kind of like the Morphe 35OS. They're all shimmer shades. This is more of like a lid shade. These colors are really, really pretty as well. Colors are really, really pretty. This one seems kind of matte a little bit, but there are some of these shadows that are in this palette. The next palette here is 35U palette. And this is a lot of shimmer shades. It does have some neutrals in this palette as well. Super affordable, super pigmented. Definitely, Morphe is definitely a brand you should try out. This one is the Morphe 35B, I believe. Yeah, I need to re-glue some of these back in there. But again, this is another colorful palette. This shade is super, super pretty. Very, very pretty. Again, super affordable and pigmented. And the last Morphe palette I have is actually the Jaclyn Hill Favorites palette. And I'm super excited she's going to come out with another palette. Definitely going to try to get my hands on that. This was a limited edition product. So yeah, this is an OG for sure. These palettes here are from Zoeva. I've had these palettes for about a year or so. I really like the quality of these palettes, but this is the Zoeva Smoky palette. I really, really like the shades in this palette. Super beautiful. You have some like brow bone highlight or set the crease. You have some shades for the crease. You have some deeper shades here. Very, very pretty. This is like my favorite from the three that I have. This next one here is the Naturally Yours palette, and this is a warm tone palette, as you can see there. This one's a good one to have because you can use it for every day. The last palette I have here is the Zoeva Metals palette. I haven't really used this palette at all, to be honest with you, but I have swatched some of these. They do feel buttery as well. The red shade, it's really, really buttery also. Wow, that one's really, really pretty. Super pigmented again. If you haven't tried Zoeva out, I think they're actually a brand to try out. They are really, really good quality and they aren't very expensive either. Next palettes I have here are my palettes from Juvia's place. This is kind of like a smaller indie brand, but they are definitely getting their name out there. So this first palette is called the Masquerade palette. These shadows are super, super pigmented. I love these shadows. Again, super pigmented. These palettes, if you have been eyeing them, I think you definitely should pick these up. I think these palettes are worth it. If you're thinking about trying them, you definitely should. This next palette is the Nubian by Juvia's place. This was the first palette I ever purchased from her site. This one has a mixture as well of neutrals and pops of color as well. And again, some swatches. This one's like super buttery. This brand is really affordable as well, and also there are discount codes out there, so make sure you find some discount codes for Juvia's place. This next one is pretty new to my collection. I received it a few days ago. This is the Saharan by Juvia's place. Isn't it beautiful? The shades are super, super gorgeous. I've seen swatches online, but I haven't swatched mine yet. So of course, this one reminds me of the Kathleen lights with ColourPop called Telepathy. Gorgeous. Wow, this is like super bright gold. Very, very pretty here because I just feel like this shade is the one my eyes go to. Again, super pigmented. Wow, it has a lot of pigment. Yeah, this palette is nice. I can't wait to play with this. I haven't created any looks with the pigmentation on this. Is amazing. I can't wait to play with this. So the next set I have going on here is my single shadows and palettes that I only have one of. So this one is Makeup Revolution I Heart Makeup in Chocolate and Peaches, and this one is supposed to be a dupe for Too Faced Peach palette, and I did do a dupes video on this palette comparing it to the Sweet Peach palette. So if you're interested to know a little more about this palette, definitely check out that video. The next palette I have here is from Facebase. I actually picked this palette up from Hot Look, and this is an all matte palette. Again, you have your neutral shades and then your darker outer corner shades, and then you got some bright pops of color. This palette is, I like it. It's not like super pigmented like with the first swipe, but it does have pigmentation. The shadows here, they're a little drier, but you can still blend it out. This next one here is from Saucebox. I actually did my first ever YouTube video using this palette. And again, it's just a neutrals palette. The shadows here are like really big, and they're also really pigmented as well. Yeah, this is the Saucebox Etude palette if you're interested. Well, the next palette I have here, well, this is a Z palette. It's an extra large Z palette, and I have all my Makeupgeek shadows in here, and you guys all know those are super pigmented. And another palette that I have from Makeupgeek is this one. This palette is in collab with Manny MUA here on YouTube again. Of course, my eye goes to this shade right here. Really like that shade. It's really pretty. Again, another shade that's like compared to MAC Club. This palette I don't think is available anymore. This was limited edition, but if you are still able to get your hands on it, definitely a good palette to have. The next palette I have here is my Tarte Z palette, and I have all of my Anastasia shadows in this palette here. Anastasia is super smooth shadows. I really like her the pigmentation. Ooh, that color is really pretty. Yeah, these are all my Anastasia shadows in this Leopard Case Z palette. And lastly, you guys know about my Coastal Scent shadows. I did do a video on these, so if you're interested in getting a little more information, and I do swatch all of these shades as well. So these are all Coastal Scent shadows that I have. So my MAC collection is obviously very big. MAC was my first high-end makeup product. After I tried their products, I was just like obsessed with them, and I had to have everything MAC. So these two are actually the first purchases I have ever made from MAC, and I didn't actually buy these. My husband, then boyfriend, was the one that bought these for me. These two, and he bought me some kits and like foundation and stuff like that. I was like, oh my gosh, this is like super expensive, you know, because I've never bought anything high-end. So MAC definitely holds another little place in my heart as well. But these two were my first two palettes I ever had. So this one is from the holiday collection, and it's called Fascinating Ruby. So a warm tone side and a cool tone side, as you can see. Definitely have hit pan on these. And this next one is the Intriguing Scarlet. Some warm tones and some green shades right here. Again, I've hit pan, as you can see on a lot of you'll probably see in a lot of my palettes that I don't hit pan on a lot of shades very often, but these two were my first MAC ever, so I went ham on these. I don't know what collection. These three are limited. Well, actually, all of the quads are limited edition. So this one is 6 Devil May Dare Warm Eyeshadows. This next one is 6 Sorceress Eyeshadows. And this is just cool tone palette with purples and grays and blues. This next one here is 6 Dashing Lassie. And another neutral palette. Again, MAC was my #1 product that I bought. I didn't buy anything Sephora. MAC was the thing I was first introduced during, you know, it was a high-end product, the first high-end product I ever purchased. So every time I saw they came out with quads, I had to get them. And then I discovered Sephora, and it went to hell from there. Well, not hell to me, but anyways. This one's the Burmese Beauty Quad. Again, my little thing. See, I've had these for years. So browns and gold shades, very pretty shades. This next one is Parlor Smoke and purple shades with brown. Super. I really like this one. This one was one of my favorites. I don't think I'm gonna go through all of them because a lot of these quads were limited editions. So as you can see, I have some purples and some neutrals and this blue with a pop of yellow. this green quad, this kind of neutral quad as well, blues and purpley mauve shades. These are all limited editions quads, I believe, so there's no really point in me going through that. So these are all single eyeshadows from MAC. If you guys want like my MAC collection and what I have in each palette, I can do that for you guys. Just leave a comment down below, and my like pinkish and orangey palette, and then this is my purpley palette, and I also wanted to add some like shimmer shades in here as well. And then this one is my blues and grays. This is my cool tone palette. I love this shade. This is called Steamy. Very, very pretty shade. But I only have 2 palettes from Anastasia. I did have the Tamana palette, I believe, but I did declutter that a few months ago. So these are the only 2 palettes I have from Anastasia right now. The Master palette by Maro is actually my favorite from the 2. This one is limited edition again. The shadows on here are super, super pretty jewel tone shades. Super buttery, super pigmented. I really, really like this palette. Again, I do have a video, I think, reviewing this palette, so if you're interested to see a little more about it, again, it's limited edition. I don't think you'll really be able to find it unless you pay an arm and a leg for it on Amazon or even eBay, but this palette is really, really pretty. And the next palette I have right here is the Modern Renaissance palette. My palette looks really, really pretty, actually, because I don't really use this palette. Everybody raves about this palette. I don't really use this palette as much as I should, but again, super pretty shades, warm tone shades, a lot of pop of pinks and orange and brown and shimmer shades. This palette is really, really pretty, but my eyes don't really gravitate to play with this palette very much. So this is my Too Faced collection that I have. This first one is the Natural Matte palette. And I actually really, really like this palette. You might not really tell that I use it, but I actually do. I have a little dip in this. And in these shades, these are like my go-to shades that I usually use in this palette. Super, super pretty for every day. And the shadows are really, really pigmented and smooth as well. This is the original Too Faced chocolate bar. I'm sure a lot of you have this. This palette has been out for a bit, but I just got this palette last year. My husband actually bought it for me for Valentine's Day. But again, I don't play enough with this palette either. But pretty, a lot of warm tone shades. And then the next one was the Too Faced Semi-Sweet Chocolate Bar. This one is more cool toned than the other one is. Still very, very pretty. And then the next one is this Too Faced Chocolate Bonbons palette. And this one's cute. It has hearts in it. A lot of warm. It has a mix of warm and cool tone shades in here. And then the newest palette from Too Faced is this Sweet Peach palette. This palette smells like peaches. It's like, it smells so good. If you're able, I believe this palette was gonna be limited edition, but then they just made it permanent. This is my Kat Von D palette. This is the first ever Kat Von D product I picked up. This is the Kat Von D Ladybird palette, and it does have a mix of cool tones and some warm tone shades here. Next Kat Von D product is pretty new. It's the Shade and Light Eye Quad. And this is the one in Sage. I thought this green shade was really, really pretty. I actually used this palette in one of my videos as well. Shadows are super, super buttery. Very, very pigmented. Wow, that color is like... I haven't used this palette in a while. This is like a camel shade. And this next one right here is the Shade and Light Eye palette. A lot of us have this in our collection. I do like this palette a lot because it has the neutrals, the cool tones, and the warm tone shades. Really, the makeup look that I have in this video was using this palette. I used this to set my eyeshadow primer, and then I used these 2 shades in my crease, and then I just mixed these 2 for the lid. And this one is limited edition. This is the Kat Von D Mi Vida Loca palette, and this one's like gorgeous. When I saw this palette, I knew I had to pick it up. Isn't it beautiful? Like, these shadows are pretty. It's just so, so pretty. Like, I love this palette. My eyes go towards this shadow. And then this one right here. Unfortunately, this palette is limited edition, so you can't pick it up. But I like the mix of all the colors in here, the colorful shades, and then you get the little mix of neutral shades. So this first one is, of course, the Kylie Eyeshadows palette. This one is the Holiday 2016 palette. I really, really like the shades in this palette. I've heard really mixed reviews. They don't really have that much pigment in them. They're not as smooth as other brands that I have tried. Some of them are hit and miss. I believe the shimmer shades are really nice, but the matte shades are the ones that they've had some complaints about. The next palette here is the Burgundy palette. Again, my eye goes straight towards this shade right here. Very beautiful shade. Again, these shadows are really pigmented. Again, the shimmer shades are. Next palette I have here is this Viseart palette. This is the Natural Mattes palette. It has a whole bunch of matte palettes. I have used this palette about a couple times and really pigmented. I haven't had any problems with blendability or anything like that. The colors are really smooth as well and buttery. Just a neutral palette. The next ones on here are two of the Stila palettes. This first one is the Our Eyes Are the Window eyeshadow palettes, and this one is in Body. It's a lot of purpley blue shades, very pretty. There's a lot of shimmer shades in this palette. There's not very many transition shades or matte shades. It's just this shade right here. Every other shade in this palette has glitter in it. I really like the colors that are in this palette. They're not very buttery or anything like that. They're kind of drying, but I really like the shades. And this next one is Eyes Are the Window in the Mind. And I like this palette. It kind of reminds me of this one a little bit, but this one's obviously more affordable. This is an all matte palette, which is perfect. You can use this for everyday shades. You have some darker shades of pretty nice lid shades and brow bone highlight shades, and then you have your transition shades. This palette's really pretty. I actually like this one. This one obviously is my favorite more than this one is. And then lastly, I have these two Makeup Forever palettes here. And this is the Makeup Artist Shadow palette in number 2. I've heard great things about Makeup Forever shadows, so I wanted to get this. I believe I got this one on sale. I didn't pay full price for it. There's no transition shades really, but the shadows are still really pretty, and these ones are actually really buttery as well. Here are some of those shadows. This one was the holiday palette from last year. I love the packaging, this glitter. The Makeup Forever logo is gorgeous. These are all shimmer shades. There's not really any matte shades, so if I want to use this palette, I have to grab a different palette, which kind of sucks because I wish I could just use this palette alone. Again, the shadows are really pretty and very pigmented as well. Wow, this one's like super glittery. But again, I just wish they had some matte shades in these palettes so I can use these palettes a little more often. So I just have 3 Lorac palettes. I have this one, which is an original Lorac Pro 2, and this is more on the cool tone palettes. Super pigmented and super buttery as well. These shadows are gorgeous, super buttery. I think these palettes are really worth it. The next palette I have here is the Lorac Mega Pro 2. This was released during the holiday from last year. Again, and this is more like a cool tone palette. I really like this palette. I love these shades right here. They kind of have a little dip in them. Again, super buttery and smooth. I just really like the quality of Lorac. From the 2 Mega Pros that I have, this one is my favorite. And lastly, this is the Lorac Mega Pro 3. I do not like the packaging. As you can see, like, I try to keep my palettes pretty clean, but obviously this is not going to stay clean. It's white, like, hello. But the rose gold writing is super gorgeous. Again, another flappy. But this is more warm tone palette and some cool tones as well. I think this palette's really pretty. There's been a lot of hits and misses on this palette. A lot of people love it and a lot of people do not. I haven't had any problems with this palette. I actually really like it. I'm really content with this palette. I actually use these shades a lot. This shade is really pretty as well. I think the quality hasn't changed on them. Yeah, there's gonna be fallout on anything really. Like, the shades are really pretty. If you're still able to get your hands on this, like, try it out. So I just have these 2 palettes from the Balm. This is Meet Matte Nude. It's all like cool tone shades. This was like my go-to palette for the longest time. And then this one is the Meet Matte Matrimony, and this is more like a warm tone palette. As you can see, I haven't even touched this one yet. This is pretty new to my collection, so I definitely want to try this out. The Balm shadows have really nice quality, so I know I'm not going to be disappointed when I actually use this. But next up is Tarte. I have these 3 palettes. This was the first palette I ever had from Tarte, and this is the Tarte Tartlet palette. But this is more of a cool tone palette. It has purple shades and some neutral shades as well. I wasn't really a big fan of this palette. I don't know, I don't really use it very often. I feel like these shadows aren't very super like pigmented. And then I got this Tarte in Bloom, and the shadows are super pretty. These are all warm tone shades, and they do have the pops of shimmers here. This palette actually is really nice. I like this one better than the first Tarte. Super buttery, super pigmented, very pretty shades you can see here. And lastly, I have the Tarteist Pro palette. This is really new to my collection. I actually got this for Christmas. My mother-in-law bought it for me, so thank you very much. But yeah, this is what this one looks like. These are like shimmer shades. Very pretty. I haven't even swatched it, you guys. I swatched it in store. She went with me to Ulta and she saw me swatching it. And then I was like, no, I need something else. So I bought stuff that I actually needed, and she bought it for me for Christmas. So these shadows feel, ooh, wow. These are like super buttery. I barely like put my finger in. I'm not even really tugging. And they're have pretty good pigment. So yeah, I haven't used this palette, but I've heard nothing but great things about it. So last but not least, this is my last little bundle that I have of eyeshadow palettes. This is the OG of the Urban Decay, and it is the Urban Decay Naked palette. And a lot of people have this palette in their collection. As you guys can see, I haven't hit pan on mine. I have way too many palettes to really be hitting pan on. Remember, I used to use Toasted on my eyes, like from lid to crease all the time back in the day when I first had this palette. But I don't have the Naked 2. I was just not gravitated towards these shades. But I did pick up Naked 3 from Urban Decay. And I did create my Valentine's Day look using this palette here. A lot of purpley shades. This is kind of like a cool tone palette. And then I also created my anti-Valentine's Day look using this palette. And this is the Naked Smoky palette. A lot of dark tone shades in this palette to create your smoky looks. And then you also have pops of shimmer here if you want to put it on your lids. And then you have your... These are all matte shades, and then these are kind of like satin finish shades and shimmer shades. And then this one is the Urban Decay Moon Dust palette. This one's pretty new. I picked it up a few months ago, and this one is gorgeous. These are really pretty to pack on. Wow, this one's gorgeous, right? To pack like on top of shadows. They're not very opaque like on the lids. It does have a lot of glitter in them. Pretty. I love this palette. This is one of my favorites from Urban Decay. And the next shadow I have here, I have the Naked 2 Basics palette, but I did drop it. And this is what happened to it. I tried to fix it, and it was when I really didn't know how to fix shadows, and it just came back out. But this is the Naked 2 palette, cool tone shades compared to the first one. And this is perfect travel palette and an everyday palette as well. This next one is the Too Faced Peanut Butter and Jelly palette. This one smells like peanut butter. It smells really good. But I think this palette's really cute. I love these orange warm shades, and I like how they added these like purpley shades also in the palette. I just realized this is Too Faced and not Urban Decay. I was all like, why didn't I put my other little palette with this one? And I just realized that I just thought it was Urban Decay, but this is Too Faced. I already filmed the other Too Faced, so I'm just gonna leave this here. But yeah, this is Too Faced. It's not Urban Decay. So I'm sure I'm going to get lots of comments regarding that. Oh my gosh, this is another Too Faced palette. This is the Too Faced Sugar Pop palette. It has beautiful pops of color. I like the shades in this palette because obviously you guys can probably tell I haven't touched it. But I got this on sale too. I think I got it for $18 on the Too Faced site. Sometimes they have like 50% off of their palettes. This one's really nice for pop of colors. And I can't believe I put this on my Urban Decay palettes. It's not even Urban Decay, it's freaking Too Faced. My last palette here is the Urban Decay Electric palette, and again, pops of color. I really like this palette. Really pigmented shades. These shades are very pigmented. These are actually pressed pigments, and I believe you're not supposed to use them on your eyes, but everybody I'm sure that bought this palette uses it on their eyes. Just be careful when you use it. Yeah, this is the perfect pop of color. After I was done doing my makeup collection, I remembered I had these palettes as well. Besides this one, I just got this one. Actually got it for Valentine's Day. I'm super excited about that one. But this palette right here is the Violet Voss times Laura Lee palette, and this palette is limited edition. Laura is one of my favorite girls to watch here on YouTube, so I definitely wanted to support her and her palette. So I did pick it up, as you can see here. I really like this palette. It has a mixture of mattes and some shimmer shades there. This palette's really pigmented and really buttery as well. Very pretty everyday shades with some pops of color. The next one is this Morphe times Kathleen Lights palette, and this one is also limited edition. Again, I like watching Kathleen as well. I think she is really genuine, and I really enjoy watching her videos as well, so I definitely wanted to pick up her palette as well. Again, some shimmer shades and also some matte shades in this palette as well. Very buttery, very beautiful shades. I really like this palette as well. So these little palettes were also limited edition. These were in collab with Elena Gann. She's actually on the show Little Women LA. So she created these little palettes with Morphe. I like that the top row is shimmery and the bottom row is matte. So this palette here is not available, but it is called Coca Mocha. And this other palette I picked up as well was also another collab she did with Morphe. They launched like 5 or 6 palettes, so I did decide to pick this one up as well. I loved how they had like pops of color. So those are some swatches. Kind of mixed the purple and the red together. And this one was called Awesome Blossom. So my last 2 palettes here, this one is from Urban Decay, and this is the Urban Spectrum eyeshadow palette. This one I picked up when it was on sale, and I have still yet to use it, but Urban Decay is known to have a lot of like glittery shades and pops of color, so I really think this palette is really pretty. And then my newest addition to my palette is this one by Natasha Denona, and it is the 28 Blue Purple. Isn't it like gorgeous? I just got this for Valentine's Day. My husband bought it for me, and I am in love with it. I haven't even swatched it yet. Let's do some swatches. Ooh, super buttery. Ooh, that color's pretty. Purple, like a purplish grayish shade. Like a duochrome orange pink shade. Wow, that one was super buttery. Can't wait to use this. But yeah, this is the Natasha Denona 28 Blue Purple palette. So these were all the palettes I have in my collection. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you're not yet subscribed to my channel, don't forget to hit the subscribe button down below so you can see some of these palettes in action. And also, if you enjoyed it, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye!